Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, today is Chav Kislev. And like we've been talking about, Chav Kislev also represents the Chav HaDimyon, because the celebration of Chasidus and the redemption of Chasidus is the transformation of the Koyach HaMedame to, instead of dragging us down to our animalistic desires, it becomes the vessel that drives us further into faith. That the world of David HaMelech is the world of the Dimyon. The Daled, the Leis Lamagam Klum, imagination has nothing of its own. It just expands an idea or diminishes an idea. And that level of Malchus, which is the Koyach HaMedame, it can descend downwards and seek out all of the pleasures of Chitzonius and the outside of the world, which is where the imagination descends down into the animalistic desires and it destroys things. Or we can abstract it and elevate it back upwards, where the Dimyon goes back up to its true place with his Emunah. And then the Dimyon and Emunah, they become the space in which we can experience Lehisaneg al HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we could draw down the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in our minds in the secret of Biyad HaNeviya Madame, to draw down Nevuah. And so this battle for the Chav HaDimyon is ultimately what Torah Chasidus is coming to do, to abstract it away from the Chitzonius, God forbid, and to bring it back up into Pnimius, to allow it to be a vessel to reveal more and more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, Biyad HaNeviya Madame. Within the Dimyon of each person, the Chav HaDimyon, we have the ability of bringing that kavod, that low place of Malchus, and bringing it all the way back up to Keser, v'haKeser v'hachavod l'chayo olamim. Because when a person is experiencing the Koyach HaDimyon in its diminished state, so it's rooted in externalized kavod and kvedus, a sense of being known, a sense of presencing oneself, a sense of imposing a certain amount of space in this world. And that's the polar opposite of Leis L'Magam Klum. When the ani becomes too thickened and it's egocentric, so then a person has taken their imagination and have thickened it into this animalistic desire. And that's that place of the externalization of kavod, God forbid. But the chaf also has the ability of being thrown all the way back up to keser. And then when we can bring the chaf back up to keser, when our imagination imagines a deep desire to reach out upwards towards the hisanig al Hashem, so at that place, the keser and the kavod are l'chayo olamim. Why? Because it's connected to chayo olamim. The light is not coming from me. The light is not coming from my own dimyon. My dimyon becomes the vessel, the lens through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals his light. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks and Moshe Rabbeinu answers in his own voice. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one being mashpia, the or, into our minds. And if we enable our dimyon to become a kli for that, the kli of emunah to shape that light, so then we become a kli mali bracha. In addition to being the finalization of Yahrtzeit Kislev, which is the redemption of imagination, Chav Kislev, which is the revelation of the book of the Tanya, Chav Kislev is also the Yahrtzeit of a Heilige Tzaddik, Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky, Zchus Yogan Aleinu. Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky was the Talmud Muvhak of the Bal HaSulam. And when he came after many, many years to Eretz Yisrael, and he found the Bal HaSulam said, I've been waiting for you so long. I've been waiting you for such a long time. Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky and the Baal HaSulam said, I found what I've been looking for in my Talmud, the Rav Binyomin. And Rav Binyomin's writings are published as Yad Binyomin, Biyad HaNeviya Madame. Because one of the elements of Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky and the or of Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky's Torah is that it provides a real understanding of the role that Bina plays, the role that imagination plays. That theoretically, if a person is focusing too much on Bina or the imaginative principle, they can come to forget Chachma. They could come to forget that the main thing is to turn back to the faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the tainug of the yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And they can fall down into the externalization and the concealment of their dimyon into their animalistic self. But what Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky, Zchus Yogan Aleinu, reveals so often is that in truth, the descent of Bina is really only a lavush to Chachma. It's only meant to give Chachma more revelation, because the truest light in the world is Chachma, is the light of the Seichel, is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the Hisaneg al Hashem, is the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashpia tainug into our minds, and the tainug that we experience is just a kli to be able to experience that presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. And Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky is always showing how, in truth, don't think that Bina is now meant to be this point of orientation all on its own that's separated from Chachma, Chas v'Shalom. That's the Iker Pegam, to separate the Chitzonius of Bina from the Pnimius of Chachma. Rather, the externalization of Bina, the edge of Bina that emerges from within the interiority of Chachma, is there to intensify the light of Chachma, to force us to realize that no, in truth, the real light is not the light of this Dimyon that goes downwards, but rather it's a Dimyon that goes upwards to the place of Biyad Hanaviyah Madame, the secret of Yad Binyomin. And recently in our generation, there's a Heilige Talmud of Rav Yitzchak Morgenstern Shlita who's been publishing writings, more and more writings from Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky, because the more we understand Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky's Chlusia Ganalenu's understanding of his Rebbe, the Baal HaSulam's writings, we come closer and closer to a proper Havana of how in truth the Baal HaSulam and the Baal HaTanya are ultimately saying the same thing, and how the Baal HaSulam came into the world to be mashlim the Torah of the Baal HaTanya. Because all of the language shifts that the Baal HaSulam brings in and the archim and the different orientation points of Hashpah and Kabbalah are ultimately just synonymous with the dargan of Bittul, with the gradations of self-nullification as expressed in Hasidus. And therefore, it's no surprise that the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Binyomin Sinkovsky is on Chav Kislev, which is also the celebration of the Geulas HaChasidus. And so the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Binyomin Sinkovsky is now, we're getting more and more writings, and there's more of an awakening towards the Tzaddik. So I thought that we would learn a piece of Torah from him in honor of the Yahrtzeit. And this is from a Sefer Yad Binyomin. There are 2 volumes that are printed. There's an original old printing of Rabbi Yad Binyomin through the work of Hidden Tzaddikim. And this volume of Yad Binyomin was printed along with other volumes of the Shamatis of the Baal HaSulam. And there's more and more writings of Rabbi Binyomin Sinkovsky coming out. But this teaching is Maimer Kuf Chaf Gimel, and it was said over in Shavuos Tafshin Yud Gimel. Now in Tafshin Yud Gimel, that was a year that Rabbi Binyomin Sinkovsky said he was inside the room of his Rebbe, the Baal HaSulam. And the Baal HaSulam said, I have 2 students this year who I'm certain are going to have a big hasaga, are going to have a big grasp, a big understanding of how the world works and how to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the right way. And it's clear from the other Talmidim that one of those Talmidim at least was Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky. So this is a Torah from Shavuos in that year from Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky. And the title of this teaching is the novelty, the chiddush that came about into the world through the giving of the Torah, specifically through Moshe. And that chiddush was that Moshe Rabbeinu drew the Torah down even to a place of low Lishma. Now, this speaks directly towards what we've been talking about, that the inclusion of imagination into Avodas Hashem is when we realize that the imaginative principle and imagining ourselves as close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be used as a kli to be magdil our true connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Bina, Dimyon, is utilized as a kli to reveal the inner light of Bittul and Tainug of Chachma. And that low lishma, that level of dimyon, that level of ona'ah and trickery and fraudulency and not being absolutely authentic in our avodah, if we worship that and we say that's the end all be all, then God forbid the dimyon goes down and it gets stuck and it gets lodged in a low lishma, and that's avodah, not tachlis. But if it's utilized as a handmaiden to elevate the light of chachma, then the dimyon and the darga of low lishma has the ability of intensifying and serving as the engine that reveals more and more revelation. And so the chiddush of Matan Torah was not that Moshe Rabbeinu taught us how to learn Torah Lishma. That's Avada true. The light is in Lishma. The light is Avada in Chachma. But Moshe Rabbeinu came to show us that if utilized properly, Bina has the ability to give us an even greater experience of the innermost quality of Chachma, which is the true source of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us Tainug. And so this Yerida is L'tzarech Aliyah. So these are the words of Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky. When it comes to the giving of the Torah, why was it specifically taking place in the time of Shavuos? What novelty is there in this? Why did it wait until Moshe Rabbeinu? Couldn't Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, or the Avos, or the other tzaddikim brought us the Torah? They were able to engage in the Torah even prior to Shavuos, even prior to that day in which Hashem revealed the Torah in the world. There was already a level of Matan Torah. What is it about Shavuos that's going to be unique? The Torah is eternal. The Torah is not something that's only emerging into existence at a particular moment. It's eternal, and because it's internal, immediately within the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that desire to give the Torah to Yisrael, it already happened as a gift. The gift of the Torah was already revealed. It's something that's baked into the very fabric of existence. It's what precedes existence. Because the giving of the Torah is perpetual, it's eternal, and therefore it's not fundamentally rooted in any calendaric date. So what was the chiddush of Shavuos? The Torah existed. It was only revealed in a revealed way on Shavuos. But what was that? Why did it have to be done then by Matan Torah? But the secret of the matter is as follows, that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he drew down the Torah, he drew the Torah down to the level of Lo Lishma. He drew it farther down than anybody else, down to the level of the imagined process of learning Torah, where there's still inauthentic orientations inherent and fraudulent orientations inherent in that person's avodah. Because the Torah that was given forever and the Torah that's always revealed in existence, that's the Torah of Atzilus, that's the Torah of Chachma, that's the Torah of Lishma, of authenticity, of not being stuck in the imagination and not needing to descend down into a territory of Bina, which is Bria. The Nitzchias of the Torah, the eternality of the Torah is the Bechina of the Lishma, the non-involved kind of human condition orientation to the Torah. The purified realm of Torah, the Torah of Atzilus, that's what's always been there. But at that point, until the coming of Shavuos, until Moshe Rabbeinu, that place of lo lishma, that place of imagination, that place of inauthenticity, it appeared to be limited and cut off from the light of the Torah. The light of the Torah couldn't descend down there into the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. It was stuck in the world of Atzilus, which is the world of authenticity and lishma. And this is the novelty of Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom, that he drew the Torah down even to the level of lo lishma, even to that place of inauthenticity, the worlds of separation. And this is why the Torah was given on Shavuos, to teach us what? Even if a person is entirely entangled and stuck within the wrong intentionality, and it's still only this imagined form of a connection, and it's lo lahashpia, they have not yet learned the secret of giving it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not only taking for ourselves. And we haven't yet understood the purpose of all things, which is ultimately to bring joy and nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who wants us to enjoy ourselves through Avodas Hashem. We're still stuck in our own minds. We're still stuck in our own machinations. Nevertheless, Gam Ken Yuchal HaChayizbo, Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Torah down to a place where even a person on that level of lo lishma, the chaf hadimyon, the ki'ilu, even a person on that level has the ability of grasping it. And this is the novelty of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was able to draw down the Torah to each and every soul of Klal Yisrael in accordance with their own understanding, even down to the level of inauthenticity and lo lishma, and that imaginative principle. And that if, he revealed the secret, that if a person spends time, even when they're functioning in that inauthentic place, that over time, will be able to grab hold of the chain of levels and begin to climb out of those levels of inauthenticity and the imagination, and the Ma'orsha Yachzir Lemutav, and eventually all of our inauthenticity and lo lishma will be transformed and revealed to be connected to the lishma and to the goodness and to the tainuk ha'amiti. And that each and every person will be able to experience it by way of their effort, even if it began in an inauthentic way, even if it began in an imagined way with the chaf hadimyon. And this was what was so remarkable about Moshe Rabbeinu, above and beyond anybody else, that he drew the Torah down la'einei kol Yisrael, to the vision, to the perspective of each and every yid in accordance with their own development and their macro and micro systems of influences, meaning to say to the lowest possible levels of lo lishmakait, to the lowest levels of imagination. And that there should not be a single Jew who's lost in their capacity to access that Torah. And they can always start from lo lishma. Moshe Rabbeinu did this because Moshe Rabbeinu is the faithful leader who is compassionate and worries about each and every soul down to the very last one in the lowest places of lo lishma. And therefore the biggest avoda that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to do, the biggest work that he was able to do, was to draw the Torah down during the time of Shavuos. And Moshe Rabbeinu was in fact doing at that moment what every soul in Klal Yisrael was going to have to do later on throughout the generations. And it's for that reason that Moshe Rabbeinu is considered like all of the souls, that Moshe Rabbeinu drew the Torah down even to the Tachta Sahar, even to the place of Lo Lishma, not only Lamala Minahar, which is Lishma, but he drew it down to the bottom of the mountain, to that low, low place for every single soul in the future. And because of that strength that Moshe Rabbeinu did, we have the ability to do it where we are right now. Moshe Rabbeinu did it by way of the preparatory stage for each and every one of us. We're going to be able to climb out of this low lishmakite, of this tachtas ahar, and elevate back up from that bina back to the true purpose of all things, which is lehisaning al Hashem, to experience the level of chachma b'pnimiusa, which is the light of atik, which is the recognition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's mashpia shefa down in every single moment. And when a person leans into the pnimius hadavarim, to the pnimius of lishma, and the pnimius of the low lishma, which reveals more of a level of lishma, then a person can experience and be overwhelmed by the tainug and the dvekas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the tachlis of the Dimyon, to be mistavik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the secret. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who created this recipe, that the light of the Torah is strong enough to restore the person back to the directions of authenticity. The Chaf HaDimyon is Megala, the real thing itself. And from here we see that it's possible for a person to learn Torah and to be mistavik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in all methods, in all ways, and not to deny the validity of the Lo Lishma, not to deny the imagination, like we've seen from Rav Aaron Halevi Streselia. That even embedded within the inauthenticity and the imagination is embedded the possibility of returning back up to the innermost quality of Das, which is the Pnimius Hadas, which is the Moichan of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is L'Hisanig al Hashem. And this is the work of all of the tzaddikim in each and every generation, preparing this, always, 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 ensuring not to be mebazbez, the lower levels of lo lishma, not to deny them, not to be mezalzel them, not to cheapen them, not to make a person feel meruchak because they don't have it in an authentic way, but rather to teach and to understand that the inauthenticity can be utilized to bring a person to a true place of authenticity. The lo lishma can bring a person to lishma. The dimyon can bring a person to dveikus and lehisanig al Hashem, which is b'sharosho, the shorosh of emuna, which is efes zulaso, the fact that there's absolutely nothing other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything is efes hamuchlat. Everything is rooted fundamentally in the gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We get there by way of these secondary circuitous routes of dimyon. The tzaddikim were not busy wondering which is better, which is worse, which is more, which is less. They were trying to be machshir all of the drachim. And therefore every single yid can be like Moshe Rabbeinu, b'chaf hadimyon, kim Moshe. Because everything's been prepared already for me through Moshe Rabbeinu. La'enei kol Yisrael, he did it for each and every yid. And what this means on a practical level, in terms of avodah, is just that we have to recognize that the work has already been done for us, that Moshe Rabbeinu was meichin within ourselves all of the steps necessary in order for us to transform our dimyon from a place of animalistic tendency up towards a place of nevuah, like Moshe. And if a person is actually meritorious to recognize this, then their work begins and they begin to see the toelis of their avodah. This is the inyan of Tachtas Ahar. This is the inyan of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed Moshe to bring the light all the way down, to be mezachich l'lo lishma. And this is the secret of the Chaf HaDimyon. This is the light of Binyomin Sinkovsky, who reveals how the Bina, the descent away from Chachma, the apparent descent from Bittul B'Metzias into Yesh, into the need to be mityageya, to engage in Avodah, is not actually a descent away from the true purpose, which is Bittul and Chachma and Tainug, but rather it's a descent for the sake of accentuating the ultimate fact that the truest place to get back to is Chachma. The deviation of Bina is there to strengthen our desire to return back to Chachma. And then Bina reveals itself to have just been a handmaiden to Chachma in the fact that it revealed itself as something that stands in stark opposition to Chachma, in spite of the fact that its entire purpose was to throw us back into Chachma with even more intensity so that we can go into Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the Bittul HaMuchlat, which is to realize that my Lo Lishma and my imagination brings me to a place of clarkite and clarity. And it's Moshe Rabbeinu who teaches us how to say Kriyat Shema properly, and we have to be like Moshe and say Kriyat Shema, al das, the kavanos and the yichudim of all of the tzaddikim. And in that, our dimyon is mezachich and it's mezuchach, and David HaMelech is revealed in its truest force, which is the light of nevuah, the light of prophecy. L'chama libi b'kshu panai l'hisanig al HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We should be zocha to live with the light of all of the tzaddikim and to learn more from the tzaddikim, from the Baal HaSulam and his talmidim, Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky. Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky was gifted at matzah baking the staff, the mata, the makal of the Baal HaSulam. And one of the inyanim is that what Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky is revealing I've spoken to my dear friend Rav Yanki Klein about this so much, and it's his avodah to be bringing out the Torah of Rav Binyomin Sinkovsky. That staff, that makel represents makel kedushasi l'mala mikdushaseichem, because when a person realizes that the Dimyon is only there to reveal how high up the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes, so then the Dimyon can be transformed, Bina can be transformed and used to elevate us back to Chachma. Lo Lishma can be transformed and utilized to bring us back closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Be'ezras Hashem.